This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon to be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug, the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is Victoriana.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. Today's guest is Michael Hacker. Michael Hacker is a writer who currently lives in Southeast Minnesota. He made his publishing debut in an LGBTQ-themed Bram Stoker award-winning anthology, Unspeakable Horror, that came out in 2008 from Dark Scribe Press. He's a published author. He's published in horror, dark fantasy, science fiction, and children's. As a staff writer and editor, he edited the publications and website for Hidden City Games and their collectible horse-themed card game, Bella Sara. This past year, Michael published his first collection of short stories, OSCULUM INFAME and Other Dark Embraces for Kindle, and then narrated the audiobook. He's narrated several dozen audiobooks for Audible, fiction and nonfiction. In 2017, he started his own audiobook imprint in Arcadia Audio, devoted to paranormal nonfiction. In 2014, he began a collaboration with New Saucerian Press to narrate several books by John Keel and Gray Barker, including The Eighth Tower, Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, Men in Black, and The Silver Bridge, among others. Michael has also narrated books by Brad Steger and Jacques Vallée. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Jacques Vallée.
Jacques Vallée. His newest paranormal nonfiction title is UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings. Michael has always possessed a skeptical attitude toward paranormal phenomena and takes John Keel's adage to heart. Belief is the enemy. So, Michael, it is very good to have you here. So, as folks can see, we always dress up in these elaborate costumes for this show. It's one of the things we always do, but the folks on the podcast can't see our costumes. So, tell everybody what you chose to wear today.
Well, today I wore a costume that I've worn before and won prizes for it even. Hagrid from the Harry Potter books, complete with pink parasol.
It looks amazing. I love the pink parasol touch is kind of key for that Hagrid. Oh, that's so great. Well, I am of mixed opinions on the whole Harry Potter world, thanks to what J.K. Rowling has revealed about herself post publication. I loved those books so much when I was younger, and then and then we find out that she is a person who herself hates mudbloods in the form of being something of a bigot, and so that is a frustration I deal with whenever coming across her stuff. And so I went with this gender swapped Minerva McGonagall. I'm calling him Minervo McGonagall, just to make J.K. Rowling as angry as I possibly can. So I've got my green robe and my green hat, but I kept my beard. So I love McGonagall as a character. So I love the idea of a gender swap.
The chartreuse ribbons in your beard are especially fetching.
Thank you. I thought that was a nice touch. Yes, I liked that a lot. I'm glad the podcast listeners know about those too. There was some work getting those in there. So I've been so excited to have you on the show. I wanted to ask you about this. You are doing both your own writing and a lot of audiobook creation. And so how do you kind of balance that? How does that work in your writing life?
Well, in terms of writing, it is something that I do when time permits and when I'm motivated. I know real writers write every day and they write regardless, but I guess I'm more of I take off when the inspiration hits. But I've been writing all my life, so I do have quite a body of work out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I like writing, but it doesn't pay as well.
No.
The audiobooks, I make my living that way, and it's really very satisfying to complete something and have it up and have reviews. It almost feels like I'm part of the creative team that brought this to life, and it's a nice experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's an art form. It makes a book which feels very singularly created, deceptively so to readers. They don't
Mhm.
see the editor's work. They don't see, but with an audiobook, it almost makes it more like a theatrical production where you can
That's right.
see that an ensemble was involved,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
is one of the things that I have enjoyed about those. Now, do you do all the production side stuff too? All
Uh,
the modulating the files and uploading and all that? Because that's a lot of
uh,
work.
for my own imprint, yes, I do. Mostly because I'm cheap and it's very expensive
Yes.
to have that done. But it all depends on whether or not your schedule is such that you need to have assistance to do that to get things out the door to meet deadlines.
Right.
So, um, I have used third-party vendors for editing, mastering, and that kind of thing, but mostly I do it myself. And let's see. Um, I currently have now done two work for hires where I am working for a, a an an imprint, not
Mhm.
my own, and they handle all of that. All I have to
I
do
see.
is read. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
folks out there in the kind of who are considering indie publishing don't realize producing high quality work is either expensive or expensive. It either
Yes.
takes a ton of money or it takes a
Uh-huh.
ton of time, and we don't
Yeah.
sometimes calculate in the value of our time in the indie world
Right.
and realize, if you calculate in all those hours and you pay yourself a living wage just in terms of those
Hmm.
calculations of those hours, that production side is expensive in terms of your time.
That's exactly right. I calculate it as being, let's say, for every hour of finished audio, you're looking at, 5 to 8 hours of work to
Yeah,
produce that.
yeah.
So,
Which,
mhm.
audiobook fans know it's often, it's a 50-hour book if it's
Yeah.
a big tome. And
Yeah.
you do that math on it, and it's a lot of time and effort that goes in. So
Hmm.
but kudos to you for doing that, putting in that time for those folks, because
Yeah.
I'm an audiobook fan myself, and it is so great when
Good.
you get one that is well made and
Ah,
you just
yes.
kind of sink into it, and I can be out in my
Mhm.
garden or doing the dishes or whatever, enjoying a great book. So that's very cool.
Do you have a favorite?
I don't think I do have a particular favorite. Well, I just finished the Thief series by Megan Whalen Turner. That was a
Oh,
5 book series, and so that
okay.
took up a good chunk of my time. When you get a 5 book series, I
Hmm.
listened to the whole Stormlight archive this summer,
Hmm.
and that was really wonderful. The guy who did the Game of Thrones books. Those came
Okay.
out before the movie, and so he had to
Yeah.
make his own choices about
Right.
accents for these
Yeah.
various folks, and he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are really good people working in this area producing really
Hmm.
high quality work. But yeah, the
Right.
production side, it's a lot.
Was that the Thief series that you mentioned? Was that fantasy?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Somebody will recommend a book to me, and if it's, okay,
Hmm.
this is a book. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read this novel, no problem.
Hmm.
But if they
Hmm.
say to me, here's a 12 book series, or yeah, I'm feeling like I ought to read Game of Thrones. That's a
Hmm.
great one for kind of sinking into this fantasy world that I know is just going to
Yeah.
take me. And I'm a school teacher, so okay, that's going to be my
Oh,
summer. And I'm going to do this big
yeah.
project and I'm going to listen to the
Yeah.
entire Game of Thrones. In fact, for Game of Thrones, one year, this was a previous house, I decided to widen my driveway. And I thought to myself, as an amateur who doesn't have, experience with this kind of thing, oh, this will be easy. I'll just dig down, say 3 feet and level and then pour the
Hmm.
cement, no problem.
Yeah.
Digging an area that's 12 by 9 by 3 feet deep turned out to
Hmm.
be a lot more work and in the best shape of my life. I mean, that was an
I'll
incredible amount of
bet.
digging, but I listened to the entire Game of Thrones series and widened my
Mhm.
driveway. So that was
Yes.
it was a good experience ultimately, but boy, I misjudged how difficult it would be. So
That's
when you
great.
are in the kind of writing mood, how do you approach that, your own individual writing?
Well, I usually start with an idea or a concept and then find a character to convey it. So it can take a long time to get that character. And in the middle of that, I'm always, sort of writing down my conceptual notes for how I want this to play out, what the major plot points might be. A lot of plot is determined by character, but you can do some. Like I want this event to happen that will almost be like the world outside intruding on these characters that will make them do something different than their normal what they would conceive of as their normal pattern of life. So, it can be anything. It can be uh, uh, like a storm or a villain or a natural disaster or something like that just really makes them get out of their normal frame of life so that we can really see their characters. Um, and then when I'm writing, I usually just kind of uh, write by accretion.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what that means is that I'll sketch out something and then I'll go over it and over it and over it and add in more detail
yeah,
as things go. Um, I I've gone through a lot of writing training in my past, and really what you want to do is put in enough detail so that the reader can get what you're after. Everyone that I studied with would always say, well, I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that from your writing. So I learned how to kind of go back through and add in things, tiny details, telling details, either through setting, grounding. Uh, I don't like weather reports necessarily, but
right.
sometimes they're useful. So yeah, and as I'm working through that and adding in more stuff, things will change.
Hmm.
So I'm always kind of like going with the flow with that because I listen to the characters and I listen to the creative process, and I don't write from an outline, but I know where it's going. I have to know where it's going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the process right now of editing the manuscript for the third in what will be my first complete trilogy, which is exciting.
Oh,
The
yes.
manuscript is finished. I got to the end, and now I'm in
Yes.
that revision phase. So I'm going through and going, oh, this there's a plot hole here. This
Yeah.
character, this doesn't make sense. Why would this character do this? But I
Yes.
know the editing phase for me is a lot of that accretion that you were talking about. It's adding
Right.
details, and I don't know if you've found
Right.
this, but I'll get to the point where I'm going, okay, I'm adding detail, adding detail, adding detail, and my last round of adding details, those I need to then take back. I've gone too far, you know,
Yes.
because
Indeed.
my
Indeed.
writing tends to be really dialogue heavy. I can very much hear the characters, the
Right.
conversations they are having throughout, and then I have to go back through and say, what does the reader need in order to be able to envision this room where these people are having this conversation? And I get to that
Exactly.
place where I go, and I've added just a little bit too much detail. They don't need this. Now,
Hmm.
now this has become superfluous. It's getting in the way of the conversation. Okay, the
Right.
last round of edits get then, you end up in that, okay, I added this phrase and then I took this phrase out. It's the old Oscar
Right.
Wilde, today I added a comma, in the afternoon I took it back out again. It was a very productive, you
Yeah.
know.
True. So, I feel very much the same way. I'm interested in your process when you say that you're dialogue heavy, because that is something that I have experienced before with my students. I am um, description heavy,
Mm,
but I'll tell you, dialogue is always in scene. It's always showing, not telling. And so it's very successful. You just have to ground it. You have to make sure that your stagecraft is right, that these are not just talking heads talking to
Right.
each other, but they have full bodies and they're in a room somewhere doing something
And
usually.
there was a lot of learning for me to, as I matured as a writer, to make sure the characters sounded distinct. This is
Yes.
the way she sounds, and I need to make sure that her best friend doesn't sound the same way. And in real life,
Yeah.
sometimes, people who are close do end up sounding similar, but they've got to be distinct on the page. So how am I going to
That's
put together a group of people where if I'm
right.
not, going to constantly be saying she said, he said, whatever, as much as possible, their
Mhm.
voices identify them. And so that's something that I've worked on as an author is, making sure I'm being truthful to this character. This really is the way
Mhm.
she speaks. And
Mhm.
also, she can't sound just like everybody else. She has to be
Right.
herself.
Right. Right. And a lot of times that comes down to what their overarching motivation is,
Yeah.
whether or not they're in and kind of their posture within the story. Are they a mentor? Are they the hero? Are they the villain? Are they, you know, exposition, you know?
Right.
And those are hard because
Yeah.
you've got to make them interesting anyway.
Right. Yes. That yeah,
Mhm.
that is very tricky. And film has helped me learn to cut. And one of the things that they're really good at in film, which is unrealistic, is, people converse in this clipped way. People don't say, "Hey, how's it going?" I mean, nobody ever says goodbye on the phone because it's one
Yeah,
more word you can cut, in a
yeah,
film. But in
exactly.
real life, we have these awkward
Mhm.
moments at the end of phone calls. Okay,
Mhm.
well, I'll see you. Bye.
Uh-huh.
None of that. You just,
Right.
because that word doesn't need to be on the page. And so learning to
Mhm.
go, what is the essential thing for them to say to one another? And then,
Yeah.
they parted.
Yeah,
We don't need
exactly.
how they parted.
Yeah.
We can fill that in ourselves. So
Right.
that has
Right.
been something I'm still learning. How do I make
Mhm.
sure the dialogue is tight and accurate and propelling the story forward?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what else are
Good.
you working on right now?
Okay. Well, I have been working for a while on a steampunk novel called The Paladin Club. That's just kind of a placeholder, but I've got about 60,000 words written. It needs an act two and an ending. I've got the ending, but I mean, I've got the ending in my mind. I've written it, but it just needs a whole act two.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, I've got the characters. It's going very well. It's kind of based on the old story of Chevalier d'Eon. If you're familiar with that, that was
No.
they were uh, a spy who lived both as a man and a woman. And so in my book, I have this spy who can pass as both a man and a woman. And it turns out it's kind of based on that old book by Bulwer Lytton called The Coming Race, where he talks about Vril and the Vrilya being descended from frogs. Well, that got my imagination going, and I thought, well, what about Jurassic Park where they switch genders or they switch sexes because of their frog DNA? And I thought, oh, this guy can actually switch his sex. This person, I
Yeah.
shouldn't say guy, you know. And so I'm kind of getting into that. I'm building the world. I'm trying to get that straightened out. And then what I'd like to do is do a series. It's too early to think about series now,
But
but
we always do,
it's
right?
yes. So it's very much Victoriana, um, hoop skirts and spats and top hats and that kind of thing. So,
I love this idea, and I'm really interested in
mhm.
how does the character, because on the one hand, there's how they present, right? And the presentation
Yeah,
could be, for the sake of the mission, right?
yes,
In order to deceive this person in this circumstance, this person needs
hmm
to present as a woman or present as a man. but I
Right.
think you could do something really fun with the fact that the character might have a clear way that they themselves identify, or they could
Right.
be conflicted. Like maybe they are struggling, and a particular day the mission demands that they be a woman, and that day that's
Mhm.
not what they are feeling. And so that,
Yes.
kind of dysphoria in the face of a kind of an external circumstance that demands a particular gender presentation could be really interesting to kind of play with, with this is what I need to accomplish. But is this who I
Right.
am today? I don't know. I think that could
Yeah.
be really fun.
I love that idea. I wrote the scene where they discover that they can do this, that they have this power, and they switch from male to female in the course of this scene. But it's a complete biological switch.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
that,
it's it could be an idea that really has some legs to it.
yeah,
So
I think so. I think it's really, and if you've got, that kind of a couple of different species too. So,
yeah.
how does this other species, I'm my next plan, and this is just notes at this
Uh-huh.
point, is
Yeah.
an epic fantasy novel. And one of the things that I want to play with in it is there's no reason that another species living in a fantasy world would have to have two genders. Why two?
Right.
And so in this particular society, there are very clearly four. And
Oh.
so then, my characters then, are sorted amongst these four,
Mhm.
and that's accepted, that's understood in the society. People identify by, one of these four genders. And so I think that will be fun to kind of play with. How do the characters introduce themselves and play a role in kind of a, almost classic, the group meets in a bar and goes on a quest kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Only they are of these four different genders, and they all understand this is what these genders mean. Just to kind
Right.
of challenge the reader to go, why do we have to drop everybody into two? And so I think that could be interesting to play with.
Oh, that sounds great. I wish you good luck with that. I'd like to read it when it's done.
Yeah, well, and I have to figure out, I mean, we'll have to have pronouns and even a
Mhm.
naming convention that
Mhm.
clearly identifies them, because in that society they would
Mhm.
just introduce themselves as one of these four, and everybody would know that's what that means. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reader is going to have to get used to, oh, whenever that pronoun is used, that's one of those four. So I'm gonna have to, uh,
Yeah.
I'll have to do
I
some
like
playing with
the
it, but I'm
idea.
looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. I think it's got a lot of energy.
Yeah. So who kind of inspires you? Who do you look to when you are, getting ready to work on the next thing, and you're going, oh, I'm feeling this writer, inhabiting me to some extent.
Well, a couple of my favorite, my heroes really, uh, Joyce Carol Oates and James Elroy. And you wouldn't think of those two together,
Right?
but
Yeah.
um, I remember when I was working in Seattle and I would go up to I started out loving audiobooks and I would go up to the library and I would check out these audiobooks on cassette tapes and listen to them while I'm doing grunt work at work. And I remember listening to a book called The Devil's Half Acre by Joyce Carol
I
Oates.
have
And
never
I
read
thought,
that.
oh, it's part of her book, The Mysteries of Winterturn, which I think is a masterpiece. But she starts out, in this very high Edwardian language. And it's being narrated by this person who never appears in the story, but he's telling the story. He's like an old curmudgeon criminologist. And he has all the attitudes and the bigotries and the nastiness of a white guy who thinks that he is the master of all he surveys in like 1905. So pretty, pretty chauvinistic, really. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, that's not the story. The story is what's being conveyed underneath the
Yeah.
language. And once that, I thought, oh my God, I'd never experienced anything like that. And it was like a full revelation of what fiction can do, and so you're always kind of experiencing the story through his eyes and interpreting it for what it really is. It's just amazing. So I learned about subtext from Joyce Carol Oates.
Yeah.
And then with James Ellroy, who is just an amazing writer. Um, he he wrote this book called um, oh, I'm spacing on the title right now, but um, it's part of the LA Noir trilogy. It's the one where the guy uses Wolverine teeth to bite his victims. Anyway, I'm listening to this book and I'm hearing about it. It was all about, I thought, communism in Golden Age Hollywood. And then it turns out that it's not about that as much as it's about this guy who is a Danny, who is a detective for the sheriff's department and investigating the Red Scare, coming to terms with his own homosexuality.
Hmm.
And when he does that, he realizes he can no longer function in the life that he has chosen. And so he takes his own life.
Mm.
And I was so angry about that. That here's this character you've spent a good half of the novel trying to identify with and trying to sympathize and trying to make the hero suddenly just being killed. And I thought, oh my God. Well, then I realized what he was trying to do with that, and that his whole persona is, James Elroy's whole demon dog persona is a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, he is trying, he is he is characterizing these detectives in LA as psychopaths. There's no difference between them and criminals.
Yeah.
And that people who really get off on all of his, he uses the N word, he uses the F word, he uses all of that. And people who get off on that, I mean, they are not realizing that his characterization of the police force is really the grunts of the ruling class.
Yes, it reminds me of Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club and the way that that has been
Yes.
received by so many people who think, oh, that's cool, and he's saying this is not cool. You should
No,
not think this is cool.
no.
I've listened to a lot of interviews with him, and
Yeah.
he handles it with a good deal of grace and humor, but
Yeah.
it is gotta, I would just be so furious that so many people are entirely missing the point. Like,
Yes.
that,
Yes.
well, it makes me think of like how the makers of the Matrix must feel when they see right-wing bigots using
Mhm.
red pill as a as
Exactly.
a term, and I'm going,
Exactly.
did you
When the
watch the film?
creators
You're
of the
not getting
Matrix
it.
are
A film
trans.
by
Yeah.
one of the trans creators, and you are leaning into,
Yes.
using this imagery that you fundamentally don't understand. But yeah, I think that is
Mhm.
something that we as writers have to be brave enough to say, some people are
Right.
not going to get it, but this is the most effective way to tell this story to the people who do. And that's hard,
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And James Elroy, I've met them both in real life.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah. Because I, I went to a book signing and lecture with Joyce Carol Oates, and there was a book signing after the lecture, and I gave her The Mysteries of Winterthurn for her signature, and she said, "This is my favorite among my own works." I
Uh,
was pumped. And then this is really funny. Um, James Ellroy was appearing at the Mystery Bookstore in Seattle. And we went down there at lunch, and I was dressed for work. So he was there, and we were kind of wondering, is he here yet? What's going on? And the mystery bookstore is downstairs, so you have to go down this stairwell to get into the bookstore itself. And he opens the door and he says, "Get in a line, mother." You know. And so he's growling and angry, and then he's nice as pie.
Yeah.
He got flirty with me. I said, "This is my favorite of your works." He said, "I like it too." And I had also bought a book of pictures from the LA archives of criminals and crime scenes and all that. It's a great book. And he flipped through some pages and he says, "I'm going to sign this underneath this guy's picture. He was a real sex fiend." I thought, oh my.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
Yes. He gave me an experience I won't forget.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, that's the win in any kind of signing, right? That's wonderful.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
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 Oh, that's great.
Uh-huh.
So what
So,
has been pulling you away from your work lately?
oh, well, you go through these periods of life, I guess. I don't want to make this sad or anything, but my dad passed away a couple years ago, and it's been really difficult. I thought that the worst was behind me,
No.
and
Yeah,
it's been
that's not
really
the way grief
hard.
works, is it?
Yeah, yeah. It's been really hard to get back into the swing of things,
Yeah.
without, both of my parents are gone, and now it's like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's the purpose of being in this place? So I've really had to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I've kind of been, um, I would say, uh, trying to comfort myself with computer games and that kind of thing, wasting time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I have a real addiction to YouTube. I like watching all of those weird iceberg videos. Have you ever seen an iceberg?
No.
Oh, they're wonderful. Um, there's one that has like 30 iceberg videos, and they're all like 2 hours. And basically, they go through the entire iceberg, which starts out with the most familiar topic, and then it goes down deeper and deeper and deeper into the more obscure and arcane topics. And this can be true crime, paranormal, cryptids. I've seen all kinds of different ones. So those are very, very interesting to me. Then I watch the Y Files. Those are great. True crime, although I've seen all of them now.
Yeah.
I have I mean, there is no volcano video I won't watch. I love those. And what's going on in Iceland right now is pretty scary. So, so those are the kinds of things I've been doing. I've also been working as an audiobook narrator now for about a month on this project. It's reference work. It's the first reference work I've ever done. And it's really been a struggle. It's been a slog because there's no narrative that's
Right.
propelling you through it. It's just all paragraphs of information with subtitles,
Wow.
so
Yeah, that's how to make that interesting to the reader in a kind of auditory way when it's pretty dry
exactly.
material.
It's pretty dry. Commercial real estate.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine that being very, very challenging.
But fortunately, the writer does have a sense of humor. So whenever he kind of shows flourishes of that, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I lean into it. There is a joke here.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
good. So the videos that you tend to watch on YouTube, do those tend to be, are those 10-minute videos, but then they're going into a sequence, or are these longer, 2 hour long, videos
The
themselves? Uh,
Usually they're longer form videos, usually. Although, sometimes I'll watch political videos that are like 20 minutes long
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
But the
And are
paranormal,
they more talking head style or documentary, polished, edited, somebody's out there in the world?
um, both, you know, uh, like the iceberg videos that I was just mentioning, it's a voiceover by a human being. It's not AI. I can't take AI narration
Yeah.
much beyond like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
you know. So then they'll have um, pictures and videos like it's like a PowerPoint.
Yeah, yeah, these I've seen these where yes, and it's
Yeah.
like a very it's a high-tech
That
polished PowerPoint presentation. Yeah.
exactly. That's what it is with a voiceover. And they're fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and especially if they've got really good, interesting content, oh,
right,
I did not,
right,
where they're
right.
saying here is a graph that actually provides
Yeah,
additional information beyond what I'm saying to you.
yeah,
Those are yeah,
exactly.
really helpful.
Yeah.
So what kind of games have you been playing too?
Oh my gosh.
I know you're a video game player, but what
I
kind
am.
appeal?
Well, um, uh, I guess my favorite video game that I've been playing since 2007 is World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So I just love that game. I find the most current expansion fairly difficult. So I've been playing the classic version mostly, um, and uh, and that's a lot of fun. I also play as kind of casual games, old-fashioned games like uh, Heroes of Might and Magic 3
Mm.
or Civilization 3,
The
you
kind
know.
of top down. Yeah,
Yes.
those are they're great. Yeah, those are
Well,
great games.
they also don't influence my motion sickness, which is
Ah,
for me. So
yeah. So you don't like the first person, yeah,
no, I don't.
yeah,
I'll play the city games like City Skylines. I like that. But I get to a certain point and I can't build any further. It's
yeah,
like, oh, everything's falling apart.
yeah.
Yeah.
I highly recommend if you like that kind of top down, but the fantasy aspect. I have been playing Baldur's Gate, the new Baldur's
Okay.
Gate 3. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's fun. Oh, it's so
Okay.
great. And it's that top down and you're developing this character and this
Yeah.
little, group of characters and
Uh-huh.
the lore is well constructed. They're the voice actors are excellent.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
great.
a fun one. So yeah, if you like World of
Uh-huh.
Warcraft, I think you would enjoy Baldur's Gate 3. It's pretty
Did
cool.
you ever play those old Forgotten Realms
I
game
did.
TSR?
I played one of them, yes, and yeah, it's and
I
totally
love
enjoyed
those.
that. But I played the Civilization ones. I Those are wonderful games. They're a ton of
Yeah.
fun. There was
Yeah.
a variation on that called I can't remember what exactly the title was, but somebody out there is going to scream it out when I describe it, where
Okay.
you play a monster who is a god, and you are
Oh,
attacking the cities of other gods, but the rest of what you are doing within your community is very much like civilization. You're trying to
oh,
build up your
okay.
forces so that your people who worship you will continue to worship you and go to war with you to fight these other, gods. And it was
Yes.
a riot. It was so funny.
That's
So
great.
yeah, if folks are somebody out there is right away just going, I know exactly what game you're talking about. Please put it in the comments. Folks
I
can check it
remember,
out. It's a hoot.
yeah, like Godzilla kind of stomping through their places.
And the
Yeah.
graphics were like a combination of Civilization and the remember the old arcade game with the the monsters who would smash the buildings. What was that one called?
Oh,
Uh, shoot, they made a film of it with The Rock because it's got like
oh,
a giant lizard and uh,
uh-huh.
uh an ape and a
Rampage?
yes. So the
Rampage.
gods look like characters from Rampage. Like you have a wolf who's kind of a goofy, wolfy
Uh-huh.
character, and that's your god, and that's who
Okay.
you're playing. And then you're
Okay.
building up, making all the people worship you so that you
Uh-huh.
can then lead them off to, to attack another place. So yeah, Rampage mixed with
Interesting.
Civilization. It was
Interesting.
really clever.
Benjamin, do you watch TikTok ever?
Oh, unfortunately, yes. So my
Uh-huh.
wife got me into TikTok, and now and I've mentioned this on the show before, I will, be walking through the kitchen. I'll pull up one video, and next thing you know, I've been standing in the kitchen for an hour.
Yes.
It's completely addictive, but it's fun. There's a lot of great, and
There
the
is.
algorithm has learned me enough that it knows,
Yeah.
send
Hmm.
me historians, send
Hmm.
me people who are talking about sociology concepts, economists, so
Right.
it is learned how to keep me engaged with
Yeah.
interesting stuff to me, although also like weird world music stuff. It knows that,
Mhm.
hey, if somebody's playing an instrument I've never seen before, I may stop on that one for a
Yeah.
second.
Well, more and more AI is creeping into TikTok, which is good and bad. I like I your comment about the gods kind of made me think about this. I've seen a couple of videos where people have created god figures based on countries. So
Hmm.
you'll see Japan's, stomping through the hillside, or the United States stomping, or China stomping. It's really pretty interesting. The creativity is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Although I agree with you on the AI narration. Like as soon as I hear, oh, this voice sounds, uh, because they're good enough now that there's a particular uncanny valley aspect
Yeah.
where it's not a traditional robot voice anymore. Like now this sounds like a person for 2 seconds, and then it's
Mhm.
very clear that it's not. And those tend to be overlaid over like images. And as soon
Yes.
as I'm going, there's a lack of a human interaction here. Nope, this is just a
Right.
person trying to use technology to create content rather than engage with me as a human being. Forget it, I'm out of
Right.
here. So
Right.
hopefully
Oh,
I
that's
can
interesting. I like that
clear a
point of
lot of
view.
those out of my timeline.
Well, I mean, I guess you may be familiar with the Atom voice, which is ubiquitous. It's out there. It's used in a lot of different short form videos for YouTube and TikTok. Um, uh, I forget the name of the company that came up with it. Anyway, it's very credible.
Yeah.
But after about 5 minutes, you realize I'm not getting anything new here.
Yeah.
There's no subtext.
Yeah.
There's no feeling involved.
Yeah. And
You
that's
know,
where I'm going. And so,
everything you are experiencing with this video, you're bringing to it.
yes. And I think that as we see more and more AI, and as it develops, there's going to be more and more of that disconnect where somebody who is, kind of a casual, casually engaging might be satisfied by that, but more and more we're going to reject it as people who say, I
Yeah.
want to know the
Mhm.
human being involved in a real meaningful way. And this is taking me away from other people.
Right, right.
So
Mhm.
I hope that people reject that and that the financial model doesn't incentivize that to such an extent that real human creators are being removed from the process because I would much rather connect with a human being.
Yes, me too. Me too. Especially with something like a romance. Who wants to hear a machine narrate a
Oh
romance?
yeah, yeah, that's. And
Yeah,
and unfortunately, they will get good enough that they will deceive us
right.
into thinking that this is a human romance. And so I think it'll be really important for creators. There used to be a time where you could be an author and you could, hide out in your house wherever, and you could just
Uh,
write. and the words on the page were all the people would know about you. And I
Right.
think that is dead and gone. People
Yeah.
will need to be out there saying, you are forming a relationship with me as a writer. And
Yes.
if that's not important to you, AI is going to be an alternative. So
Yeah.
I need my readers to be people who care about who's the human being behind the pen.
And
But
this is why you
that's
do
going to be
this
tricky.
podcast, right?
Right, yes. So people are saying, "Oh, I have seen Michael Hacker. Next time I'm reading a book by Michael Hacker, I know that actual human individual, and I want to read
Indeed.
his next book rather
Mhm.
than, oh, okay, this is somebody that this is just words on a page. For all I know, they might have been written by a machine." So.
Right, right, right,
Well,
right.
on that note, let's go to our ad break because that's what keeps the
Okay.
human beings, working and existing. And then when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you. And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Your Shelf book club today. Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering.
Hi, I'm children's author Sarah Geddes. I'd love for you to check out my book, Henry the Sneezing Dragon. It's about a clumsy dragon in search of friendship. My book, To the Moon, a Jacob and Trevor adventure, will be released September 2024, a story about 2 little boys who use fairy dust to travel to the moon. And in fall 2024, The Water Bear Astronaut, about a tardigrade who travels to space, will also be coming out. All books will be available on Amazon.
I'm Mary Kendall. I'm a fiction writer. I write stories that are weird, odd, gothic-y, a little bit left off center. What is this? This is my latest release, Bottled Secrets of Rosewood. It's billed as a contemporary gothic thriller, and it's being touted as a page-turner by people that are reading it. It was inspired by a real-life find, a blue bottle that was uncovered in an archaeology dig outside of Williamsburg, Virginia. The bottle was discovered to be a witch bottle. Witch bottles were a thing back in the day. They were filled with items such as thorns, clippings, glass chips to draw out evil intent from the person holding the bottle. Sound interesting? You can find out more at my website, marykendallauthor.com, or if you'd like to buy the book, it's available where all books are sold.
Welcome back, everybody. So I'm here with Michael Hacker. Michael, what is something you've been daydreaming about lately?
And I have a favorite fantasy, which is to, if reincarnation is a thing and time is actually a circle, could I reincarnate as myself and live my life over again, knowing everything I know now? And I go
Um,
through these little sequences and I replay things, and I love to think about the possibility of doing that, and getting everything right.
Yeah. Well, the philosopher Nietzsche used this as a thought experiment. He called it, I believe it was called eternal recurrence. And he used
Oh,
this as a thought experiment for evaluating our moral decisions. And he
uh-huh.
basically said, imagine you were going to have to do that. You were going to be forced to relive your life eternally.
Yeah.
Would the life that you are creating be one that is pleasurable to you to re-experience, eternally, or would it be a kind of torture to watch
Ah,
yourself making the same mistakes over again and experiencing, and
if
imagine
I
it
had to make the same
ism,
mistakes
but
over
it's
again, it would be torture.
yeah.
It would be. Yes, absolutely.
But if you are making the kinds of choices that are produce a fulfilling life, maybe it would be wonderful. It would be a kind of paradise to go, I get to revisit my times with my son and all these
Right.
wonderful experiences that I've
Those,
had. It would be
those,
like, what's the Facebook memories forever. Like,
which give
so,
me the
I
heebie-jeebies.
think it is an interesting way to think about our lives. Like,
Yeah.
are you living the life you would want to experience again? Then if
Um,
not, what do we need to change?
yes, exactly. It's a great thought experiment. And really what it comes down to is, after all is said and done, is it is what it is. And really, every ounce of pain I've ever suffered in my life has been for the good,
Mhm.
really.
It would be so interesting. I mean, if you were aware, so you imagine you're trapped within your experience, but with the knowledge of
Yeah.
your entire life. I
Oh,
can imagine that there were th times when I was happy that I would look at and go, "Oh no, this is going to turn out terribly." And there were
uh-huh.
times when I was deeply sad and I would go, oh no, but I know that there is this, wonderful thing that is going to be around the corner. I think
Mhm.
my wife and I just got married this last summer, and I think back
Oh,
to this will be no
congratulations.
surprise to her when she hears this, but before we got together, I was, it was during the lockdowns. It was a deeply depressing time, and I
Yes.
could just imagine having to re-experience that now would be so different because I would know, yeah, but come January, I'm going to meet Crystal, and
That's right.
things will get much better. You
Yes.
know,
Yes, indeed. Yes,
it would
indeed.
be a very different experience to see that dark time, knowing we're
Yeah.
going to get out of this.
Well, it's kind of like heliotropism. We always turn towards the light. We turn towards the sun. We can't exist long in the dark.
Yeah,
That's my faith as in the human spirit.
yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting thing for me to think about, to kind of contemplate too. To what extent do we modulate our own perceptions and our own
Mhm.
expectations? And so when things get grim, we become more open to and willing to see the good. And when
Yeah.
things are pretty great, we maybe are less inclined to recognize the goodness all around us and we turn away from that. That
Indeed.
there's something there's a poem there. I need to work on
Yes,
that.
there is. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about what are some things that are coming up that you want listeners to be aware of right now as they're,
Well, I guess in terms of my writing, I have just published a collection of short stories. Some of them have been published in anthologies. Um, and I published that on Kindle, only I haven't done a print on demand version of it, but it's available on Kindle. It's called Osculum, Infame, and Other Dark Embraces. And then I've also done an audiobook version of it, which is available on audible.com. And you can find that all under my name, Michael Hacker.
do you find what have you found about this one is a kind of a perfect experiment because you've got, or at least from my perspective, because I'm going, oh, okay, so this is now out in Kindle and it's out on Audible, but the quality on Audible, I'm presuming, is high. You're a professional. Do you find
Yeah.
that folks are, more inclined one way or the other in terms of, are those sales numbers giving you a clue about the way people are wanting to read now?
No, not yet. It's been too, it hasn't taken off. I haven't done
Oh, it's
enough
too soon
marketing.
now.
Yeah.
I will be
So,
really interested to hear. Do more
yeah.
folks find the book via Audible? And it's not up to us in many cases. It's the algorithm and it's where they
Mhm.
find it. But I do wonder if more folks will choose the Audible version versus the Kindle. So all the
I,
folks listening right now, you are our voters. Please
uh,
go either purchase the book or get the audiobook, and that's going to be our vote, and then we'll know which one is more successful. So all of our
yeah.
listeners, that's your homework this week is vote by purchasing either the Audible version
I love it.
the Kindle, because
Thank you,
I mean,
audience.
I have to tell my students often that reading an audiobook is legitimate reading. It's
Yeah.
different skills in some ways, but some of the skills are the same as reading a visual text, but they're
Mhm.
both reading
Yeah.
and they're legit. And kind of once folks kind of break through this bias
Mhm.
that an audiobook doesn't count, then some of my students end up being much better readers.
Yeah.
The ones when it's really academic, I'm trying to train them to listen to the audiobook with the physical text in front of them. And that
That's
works
a
for some
wonderful way
people.
to
And I
read.
recognize for some people that doesn't work because one or the other is distracting. But if they can do that with a text like the one you're recording right now for the real estate one where they need to take in
Exactly.
that information, audio and the physical text together may actually be the best.
Two different parts of your brain.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep, and it's legit. And you can speed up the Audible to, the speed that you want to read, and you're
Mhm.
following along with the text. I tell my students I sit there with a highlighter. I've got the physical
Mhm.
book in front of me on paper and a highlighter and the audiobook. And that's
Mhm.
for certain authors. That's when
Yeah.
I'm, reading Octavia Butler, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm going, I want to be able to highlight a particular quote because there are so many quotes where I'm going, this is such an amazing, just as a sentence. Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the best examples for me. If I don't know if you've read
Uh-huh.
much of him, but the man's ability to craft a sentence is like I don't know that he has a peer working in in writing today where
Right.
there's just a sentence where sometimes I have to pause the audiobook and just sit there with the book, close the book and just go, I have to think about that sentence for a
Mhm.
while. Like he is working on another level. And so it's really helpful to me to have those different ways to take it in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Ta-Nehisi Coates. I just recently read an opinion piece by him. I can't remember where it was, but it was great. It
Yeah,
was really
yeah.
great.
If you get a chance to read The Water Dancer, so I
Okay.
was I was nervous because I'd read his nonfiction and I'd
Uh-huh.
read he wrote some comic books and those
Oh
were
yeah.
also very good. So I knew he could do fiction, in
Mhm.
the form of comic books, and I knew he could write these absolutely amazing nonfiction kind of memoir style, political, books. But then he
Mhm.
wrote a novel, and I was very nervous as I was coming out because I was going, but what if it's bad? Like, what if this doesn't work? And it's called
Yeah.
The Water Dancer, and it is
Okay.
brilliant and it will stick with you. It's one of those
I'll
books where you
check it
will
out.
be haunted by it. So yeah, The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So good. So there, I put one on your to read pile. Um,
Yes, you did.
what's already on your to read pile that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm a great fan of the author Gary Indiana, not the city, but the author. And
Is that his given name? Is
yeah,
Gary, Indiana? That's
yeah,
amazing. Did his parents know that that was a city?
I'm pretty sure they did. But he is a counterculture author. He was really, cut his eye teeth in the old days of the Village Voice and that kind of thing. And he um, he wrote a trilogy of crime novels based on real crimes. One of them is based, it's called 3 Month Fever. It's based on the Andrew Cunanan um, series of crimes. And then the one I really want to read right now is called Resentment. And it's about really, I mean, he changes all the names. So it's a roman à cla, but he bases it off of the Menendez brothers,
That
which
would
is
be.
a,
I was just talking with my sister about how she saw a documentary recently about how
yeah,
the story of the Menendez brothers that we were kind of fed by the media leaves
mhm,
so much out and paints
yeah,
them in such a an unfair way, and that the
yeah,
story, based on what she told me, sounds far more complex and interesting. So I Resentment by Gary,
yeah,
Indiana. I'll have to check
yeah,
that out.
Resentment. And then so that one's next on my list. I would really like to do an audiobook of 3 Month Fever. It's not been done in audio, and it needs to be, I think, it would work so well as an audiobook. So I need to investigate getting the rights.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can folks find you? Where can they find
Oh,
your work online?
my work online is michael-hacker.com, and you'll find a website there that lists my audio books. And then you can find me on Amazon at, either under the title of my book, Osculum and Fame. I typed it in the other day, and it's the first thing that pops up. And there is a rock group called Osculum and Fame, which I was worried about, but
Yeah.
so you can find it there, or through audible.com. Just do a search on my name, Michael Hacker, and you'll see all my audiobooks and then Osculum and Fame will be part of that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And then you are on Bluesky as well, right?
I am Bluesky, and I have a membership in Bluesky, Twitch, Steam, and Discord as Apskad, APSKAD. And I
Okay.
chose that because I Googled it and there were no hits.
Nice. Yes. Okay. Well, I will. So we'll make sure there are links to that in the show
Okay.
notes as well. So, folks, as you
Okay.
are listening this or you're watching it on YouTube, just scroll down there and you can click on the link and go follow.
Yeah.
That's great. And
Oh.
everybody understands their homework. You're either going to go get the Kindle book or you're going to get the audiobook so we can see which wins. So please vote that way.
I really think you'll enjoy it. It ranges from horror to dark fantasy, and there's a send up of Twilight in there that's killer.
Oh, yes. Oh, love it. Yes, good. Because that I wrote, I try not to be overly critical of any of our colleagues, right? We are
Right.
writers. These are the people we work with. And there's a
Yeah,
chance I'm going to be sitting on a panel with somebody at NorwestCon or something. And so I don't want
exactly.
to, so I admit to my students that, in my own reviews, I occasionally pull my punches and I inflate those scores because I may be working with these people.
Yeah.
But Twilight was one of the exceptions for me. I was very willing to be very, very critical because I'm going, she doesn't care. She's got the, the millions and
Exactly.
millions of dollars. If she's sitting next to me on a panel and knows that I did not like her books, that is okay.
Yeah.
But
It,
I had a,
it's all in good fun, and really, it's basically Twilight meets James Ellroy.
oh,
So
that
it's
sounds
very
excellent.
noir, lots of alliteration. It's got really punchy dialogue. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds right up my alley. My trilogy that I've got right now out is paranormal. I love,
Uh,
vampires, werewolves, that kind of thing. I just really don't like the sexism of,
oh,
let's
true.
make sure that this character has to get married in order to suddenly be a self-actualized human being. Like that's
Yeah.
not it's the gender politics of Twilight that really bother me. And the age difference, let's acknowledge, is gross and creepy.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that kind of noir will absolutely work for me. So who else would be a good person for me to have as a guest on this show?
Oh boy. When I was living in Los Angeles, I met all the people who were in Horror Writers Association. So I'm thinking that Lisa Morton would be a great person to have on your show. She's really fun. She's extremely intelligent, and she's won more Bram Stoker awards than you can really, she has run out of shelf space
Yeah.
for her awards. Past president of the Horror Writers Association, and she's coming out with a book every year.
Oh, that's very cool. I've had Francis Pi Ippolito, who is the local chair of our Horror Writers
Mhm.
Association, on the show, and
Mhm.
she's fantastic. So Lisa
Yeah.
Morton, I will reach out. That would be really cool if I could get her as
She's
well.
she also writes nonfiction. She's written the definitive reference work on Halloween.
Oh, on
Mhm.
like the whole history of,
Yes.
yeah, because there's a
Yes.
lot of lore there to
Uh-huh.
explore. I think there's
Yeah.
still some debate about, do the Scottish traditions get to claim to be more original than the Irish traditions? There's some,
Yeah.
there's some tension there, but yeah, there's a lot of really cool
Mhm.
stories there. I'd be interested in checking that out. Not just for me, I've
Yeah.
got a friend who teaches folklore, and she would
Okay.
love that. So
Okay. Okay.
I'll direct her to Lisa Morton's book.
Sure.
So before we get to our send off, there's some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com. Check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Check out Michael's collection, OSCULUM, INFAME, and Other Dark Embraces, either on audio or in Kindle. Make your choice, but check that out. And tell a friend about it. It's really important that you give that short review, click that 5th star. That really helps authors. So if you've got 3 minutes, make Michael's day. And I'm too old to tell you to smash that like button for this show, but if you want to gently tap on it an odd number of times, I would really appreciate that as well. So, Michael, Michael and I have some advice for our listeners. Michael, what would be your advice for folks going into their week?
Well, don't be afraid to play the villain in your own story. And remember, you can always prevaricate and dissemble instead of confronting the self-styled hero.
Oh, I like that. That is that is worth contemplating. What are the ways? Yes, that's good. And I always say to folks, a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Michael and I are still proud of you.
If I take